Hello, hello, hello. Oh, welcome to Podcasting 2.0, brought to you by Captivate. I'm Mark. I'm the co-founder. That's what it says down here, which is kind of nice. I have to put co-founder because Kieran gets a little upset. You know, it's rightly so. You know, it does a lot of work. You know, sometimes does a full week at work, allegedly. No, I'm only joking. He often does a full week at work. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Are you all right? It's been a while since I've been on a live stream. It's been a crazy year. It's been a crazy few years, actually. And we are here doing some live streaming. I'm going to give a shout out to some fine folks in just a minute. But we are going to talk Podcasting 2.0. We're going to talk about the release that we did yesterday and just generally kind of the ethos of Captivate when it approaches Podcasting 2.0, and basically just answer some questions. You know, if you've got any questions about Captivate, you got any questions about Podcasting 2.0, I do want to avoid questions like this, though. How do I grow my podcast? This is not the place for that. We do loads of different sessions. We do our office hours. We do our live streams on YouTube, and I love answering that question, and so does the rest of the team, but probably not for today because it's a bit of a rabbit hole on that one. So we'll do that on a different session. If you do have questions, stick them in the comments, please. It's going to be pretty cool to see all those questions jumping in. We're going to run a bit of a Google Doc behind the scenes, which Ben and Sarah are kindly running. So if you see me looking over to my other screen, that's what I'm looking at. And if I'm completely honest, I'll probably just answer some of them as they come up anyway. So we're going to keep it quite flexible. You know how I do things. You know how the team does things. We're pretty approachable and pretty relaxed, which is pretty cool. Now I'm going to give a few shout outs to a few people. We've got the Mr. Matthew Passy, the man, the legend. Fewer finer people, not only in podcasting, but generally that you'll meet than Matt Passy. I've known Matt for a long, long time now. And just looking forward to seeing you, mate. Hopefully see you in Denver, I'm hoping. And I missed the MapCon days. Remember that? Let's go. We should do that again. We should give Joe a little nudge. Let's get back to that. Now we've got Thomas Roberts. Great to see you. Yo, I love your profile picture, sir. We've got David Rosen. Hello there. Also, I don't know what's out of that window, but everyone's looking out there, aren't they? On their profile pictures. I'm enjoying that. I think we all need to look that way. That's the lesson there. We've got Mr. Pascal Fintoni, a longtime friend, wonderful, talented, at everything that he does. And good to see you, mate. Hope you and Denise are well and faring well over in France. Hope all is good. Gaz is here. Danny's here. No, I'm only joking. Hello, Gary. Good to see you, mate. And we've got Danny. Both Gary and Danny are, of course, from the Captivate team. We've got Sarah as well lurking in the background. I can see Sarah's face. She's waving right now. I'm not going to bring her on because she said she wanted a day off from the old streaming. She did a talk yesterday, which went really, really well. Sarah's an excellent speaker. So, give her a little break from the limelight. Let someone else have it, Sarah. Put Ben on. We've got Mr. Mike Flake from Central Indiana. Good to see you, a new Captivator. For new Captivate, I say new Captivate. I mean, you're 40 episodes in with Captivate now, so welcome, good sir. We've also got probably the best podcast name I've ever heard, Dumb People with Terrible Ideas. This is fantastic. I really appreciate the kind words. Around the house, we've got Robbie Stamp, this is an absolutely fantastic idea for a podcast as well. We used to work with a podcast called Your London Legacy, which wasn't historical about London, but it was sort of, the tagline was telling the stories of London's hidden talents, if you like. So it's sort of uncovering people. But I love this. I love super local podcasts. I love that this is a London-specific podcast, so I'm very much up for this one. And the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jeff Townsend does a lot for the podcasting community. So if you're not following Jeff on Twitter, please do so. We've got a pile of people in here. We've got Rob Lawrence, again, another just weirdly old friend. And I'm saying weirdly old friend, Rob, because it feels like 2 minutes ago since we met, but it's nearly 10 years, which is insane. Oh, and just hello to everyone. Oh, Mandy from the Horse Radio Network here, and inspired our release this week with the feedback from the Horse Radio Network, and Glenn in particular. Thank you for some of that feedback. We've got the wonderful Brad Miller, and we've got a few other people as well. Eric Goranson. Woo! And Paula. And we've got so many other people. Hope you and Guthrie are doing all right, Paula. Nice to see you. Much love. been working together now for nearly 10 years, which is crazy, isn't it? And I'm going to say a few more hellos, and then we're going to get to it. We have the man, Mr. Kipper McGee. Hope you're doing well. All right, let's get in. And Greg, I feel terrible not mentioning everyone. So Greg and Sally, hello. I've got to put a pin in that. I'm sorry, I'd do this all day, and then it'd be like 5 p.m. England time, and I'm like, right, team, really enjoyed that. See you later. All right, let's talk. Yesterday we did a big release. All right, Captivate releases a lot of new features. We release, that's a big banner, isn't it? We release a lot of new features very, very quickly. And in our first year, we actually had a bit of a mission. We said we want to release a new feature, at least one new feature every single week. It was a growth tactic, but also something that we wanted to do to push ourselves. Can we do this? Back when the team was tiny, it was only like really me, Kieran, Sam, and Lester, I think, at that point. So a much smaller team. And it's been interesting to see how the industry has developed. Now, Captivate pushed a lot of people to do interesting things. We were at Podfest only a while ago. When we were out there, a lot of the collateral from other hosting companies use phrases and features that Captivate pioneered. So it's really good. And I'm not saying that to say, look, Captivate's sort of at the forefront. But what I am saying is that podcasting didn't really evolve that quickly. If you think about it, for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've had RSS feeds and not that much else. We've seen big tech come and go. We've seen tech enter the space. We've seen tech leave the space. We've had the whole Netflix of podcasting trends where everyone was the Netflix of podcasting. We've had, I am a social podcasting app. All right, cool. Another one. And we've had share your snippets. I remember Clamour, Parvies from Clamour 10 years ago doing the whole, you can share snippets from podcast, the first of its type to do that. But not really much has evolved with podcasting overall. It's become an industry. It's become a media. It's become big game. It's content. It's media. And you start to hear phrases like, 360 media platforms where, people will, for example, they'll create a podcast, which is at the center of what they do. But then it's this, what they call 360 media, which includes like big budget sort of videography, big budget social media promotion, marketing campaigns, so on and so forth. So 360 sort of campaigns with podcasting right at the center of it. And I think what's interesting with that is that, like, a lot of people get a little bit annoyed by podcasting not being wrapped in RSS, whatever, who cares? We don't really care. How podcasting is done. All we want to do is make sure podcasting is done well, but we can't deny that RSS is at the center of that. I remember writing a piece a few years ago, 2018, saying that actually RSS, we don't need RSS to do podcasting, even though we would love it to remain. It's part of an open ecosystem, which I'll get to in a bit. And I sort of, postulated that maybe podcasting could be powered via API submissions, which I got a lot of grief for that. A lot of people hammered me for that, saying, he's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing. Guess what? Spotify use API submissions now for Anchor. They don't use RSS feeds because they don't need to, because it's a closed ecosystem. Apple do that, I think, for a couple of shows as well. So what I'm talking about here is podcasting has evolved, all right? But what's happening is that, for me, podcasting sort of splitting a little bit, all right? You've got kind of the purist podcasting, which I think must be delivered via an RSS feed. Yeah, fine. I get that. Open. We'll talk about that, and that's why we're here. But then there's podcasting, which is sort of like my mum wants it. She don't really care whether it's delivered via RSS. Like, if I press that button on this podcast, do I care how it's delivered to the app? Via API, via RSS, whatever. She doesn't care. She just wants to listen to whatever she wants. She loves bloody rock-on-tours, She likes Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt. Who doesn't? They're charming. So it's interesting because of the way that podcasting has become a media now that everyone knows. We had some building work done on the house, and every one of the builders listened to podcasts in their own way, and they listened to their own types of podcasts, and they didn't really care how it was delivered. And a lot of them use things like Spotify because it's convenient, which, as we know, is much more of a walled garden. Now, the reason for saying all that is not to be flippant, even though I am a lot more flippant than a lot of podcast hosting founders. And the reason for that is because I don't think we can afford to be precious. I remember a few years ago, a lot of legacy hosting companies these new hosting companies, it doesn't matter to us. They won't challenge us. And guess what? We did, and other people did. But we've all got better. Look at all the hosting companies. We've all got better because people like us and some of the other hosting companies have come along and said, actually, we can do things differently. All right. Now, I say all of that because there's one thing that hasn't really changed in podcasting for such a long time. That is the RSS feed. All right. And it's the center of this open ecosystem, which, again, we're going to get to in a while. But I just wanted to kind of set the scene. All right. Because podcasting has evolved. It has. To a lot of people, podcasting is video. And you get, you'll see it in the podcast movement group. Oh, I want to start a video podcast and put it on YouTube. And you always get someone that says, well, if you want to start a podcast, first you got to learn about RSS. And you think, well, doesn't that just make you think, what an absolute goon? Because that is not inclusive. That's not going to make me want to start a podcast, is it? It's going to make me think, well, that person's a gatekeeper. Forget, if this is what the community is like, I'm out. All right. And that is not what we're about as an industry. When I first got into podcasting 10 years ago, Gaz and I started our first podcast. We found that it was open. I went to my first events. I was speaking at events. I've been speaking at them for nearly 10 years now. And the reason that I'm in podcasting now is because back then, everyone was like, yeah, come on in. It's inclusive. And we've got to be careful that stays the same. That we're not gatekeeping old, how podcasting, the good old days of podcasting, it's not. Things have changed, all right? The world has changed. Spotify exists, and they're trying to YouTube their way through it. They want to become the creation, the hosting, the monetization, the distribution, the viewing and consumption. They want to become the YouTube of podcast, which is fine. If that's what they want to do, that's cool. But there's another side that exists, which is the open podcasting ecosystem. And as I said earlier, RSS is at the center of that. So what does that mean? And how does podcasting 2.0 relate to it? What are we going to talk about? Well, basically, all it is, an RSS feed, anyone can access it. All right. They came from, it's called Really Simple Syndication. If you remember Blogger, obviously WordPress, Blogspot, back in the day, there was a lot of these blog platforms. And what used to happen is you'd write a blog, and every time you wrote a blog, an RSS feed, which I'll explain in more technical depth in a second, was updated to say there's a brand new blog post over on this blog that you like. And what you could do is you could take that RSS feed and you could stick it in a reader, an RSS reader. There was thousands of them about. Thunderbird, the Mozilla email client, used to be an RSS reader as well. And what you put the URL of this RSS feed into this reader, and every time, say Gaz updated the blog for 2 shots to the head, the RSS feed will be updated. And me sat here in my office, I'd just get a little notification saying, oh, there's a new blog post over there. And here it is to read in your app if you want it. All right. Then what happened is Really Simple Syndication, that was published and really simply syndicated out to everyone. Now, the way that it works is Adam Curry and Dave, what they did was they said, well, wait a second, if we can deliver this other information, a blog post and the author of the blog post and the date that it was published, what about if you create a tag inside an RSS feed which tells the reader, so the application, the software, not the reader as in the human, but tells the software that actually there's an audio file that comes with that. And here's where you listen to it. All right? And that's how podcasting proper came about, and that's how it's continued to work. So an RSS feed is essentially a box of information. It's just literally a box of info, and inside that box are what we call tags. All right, so you'll have an episode tag, which for every episode, so earlier on we talked about 204 episodes, there will be, I think it was Mike, wasn't it? There will be 204 episode tags, and inside each of those tags there will be other tags. So there will be, inside each episode tag, there will be a title, an episode title tag. And there will be an episode enclosure tag, which tells the reader of the RSS feed where the MP3 file is. And that's how RSS feeds are built up. It's built up using a language, an RSS feed, built up using a language called XML, Extensible Markup Language, which we used to write back in the day. And the readers, apps such as Spotify, such as Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Overcast, whatever, they read the RSS feed, which is why when you're subscribed in Apple Podcasts or you press follow in Apple Podcasts, when I publish an episode, you get it instantly because that push is happening. It's just the feed has just been updated. I get that episode because I'm following and subscribing to that podcast. However, sometimes we get it in support a lot. I've published an episode, but it's not showing in Apple. What they're really asking is, why doesn't it appear in the directory listings like the shop front of Apple or the search results? And the reason for that is that Apple just hasn't come back around to have a look at the RSS feed again yet and seen the new episode and put it in the directory listings. It hasn't come around yet because it doesn't think that it needs to come around often enough. Okay, so again, really kind of basic understanding of it. The trouble with that is that previously not only the RSS feeds, but a lot of podcasting has been reasonably fixed. It's like, here's the RSS feed, right? And here are the things, the items you can put into this RSS feed. So here's a box, and it's like a kid. I get my little girl, and I'll go downstairs, and she's got one of these boxes, and it's got like a square cube you can put in, and a triangle, and a star shape. And these are the only things that will fit in that box, all right? And they go in, and that's it. And you take the box, and it's like, right, I can see what's in there, and I can work with that. That's the RSS feed. And that box of stuff has stayed the same for a long, long time. What is happening now, part of this Podcasting 2.0 initiative, is that a number of kind of things. Podcasting hit a bit of an inflection point a couple of years ago. We're always sort of doing that. To Doc's point as well, Doc Apple refreshes about every 30 to 60 minutes, but it can take up to 24 hours. It actually varies depending on how often you publish. So if you publish like daily, Apple will start to come back a bit quicker. It's a little bit like Google back in the day. It will know what's going on. But you're right, like they say, it can take up to 24 hours, which can be frustrating. So a couple of years ago, a bit of an inflection point in podcasting, all right? The first thing was Spotify started to get involved and state its intent. And you had other big players throwing money around like Himalaya, sponsoring parties all over the place, brilliant sushi, but didn't really go anywhere. And all these big players came into the space, all right? At the same time as big production came into the space. So wonderful content like Aaron Mankey's Law became TV shows, produced by Lauren Shuler-Donner for Amazon Prime. We had Wondery. Hanan and his team built a production company that then got acquired by Amazon. And suddenly people started going, wait a sec, this is proper media. All right. So what I can do is I can build podcasts that are actually proper media. It's not just us independent podcasters, and I can sell them and I can really generate revenue through them. However, I've got to get them to more people. All right. And then what tends to happen is that because money comes into the space, competition starts to come into the space. All right. So Spotify wanted to state its position. So they grabbed Joe Rogan, they signed a load of people on exclusives, which they're now questioning, whatever. And they said, right, for us to make that money, we have to get people listening on our app. That's one of our key performance indicators is time in app. And other people like Amazon and Apple and all sorts of different people say, well, we're happy to do podcasts and to keep RSS open and to push them out to everywhere. But we'd like to, if we can, we like them to listen in certain places because we can then see more data, we can sell more data, and thus the kind of revenue in the industry grows and grows and grows. Because as things become industries, we have to start measuring stuff more. We have to start questioning stuff and interrogating stuff more because that's where the money flows. And if the money comes in, we can't measure it. What then happens is that people don't renew, things like sponsorship agreements and branded partnerships and so on. And so the money starts to trickle back out. Okay. That was a bit of an inflection point a couple of years ago. That started happening. Okay. As a response to that, a lot of people started thinking two things happened. The people that were coming in with money, they were either coming in like VC funded saying, oh, we're going to solve problems in podcasting. I've got a new Netflix of podcasting. I'm like, all right. Okay. You've seen a little bit of money in the space, crack on. Or it was kind of the big players like the Spotifys or the Amazons of the world that came in and they thought to themselves, well, okay, look, we love this distribution model and we love that it's sort of, on-demand radio, on-demand audio, get what you want when you want it. There's something for everyone. but it's a little bit limited. Like, we can't do everything that we want to do. So we're going to start tinkering with other things. We're going to start, doing other bits, Spotify adding certain things. And then, Apple coming along and saying, we've got new categories. You can now do seasons and episodes within seasons. You can do trailers and bonus episodes. And so it started to develop, okay? We started to lift what podcasting capabilities were out there. And we started to notice things that weren't working. Things like, as we talked about just a second ago with Doc, why is Apple not updating in the directory in the search? There's no good reason for it. Why don't we fix it? Okay, so what happened is this Podcasting 2.0 initiative, which is, it's not an amazing name. I get it, and I understand why it is that, and I support it. I advocate for it, but it's a bit technical. All right, it's a bit technical, but let's roll with it. That's cool. It's not, that's not been disparaging. It's just, to the busy podcaster, it's a bit, what the heck is that? Have I got time to do that? It sounds a bit much. All right, so that's, the name's a little bit, might need a little bit of work. However, the initiatives within it are interesting, and the initiatives are really a collective effort, pioneered and spearheaded by Adam and Dave over at Podcast Index. They bring together a number of different initiatives that are intended to push the industry forward and to keep that industry open. All right. So Spotify wants everything in their wheelhouse, whatever. Cool. Podcasting at its core is open because anyone can write an RSS feed. Anyone can read an RSS feed. Anyone can access and they can play in the RSS feed sandbox. All right. And this is about standardizing the evolution of podcasting. All right. That is what 2.0 is about. And there are a number of initiatives. I'm going to get to some of the kind of things that we're releasing a bit. But it's not just about the RSS feed. Okay. So Podcasting 2.0 comprises a number of different initiatives. It comprises something called Podping, which Captivate was one of the first to support. And what that means is that Captivate supports within an RSS feed an identifier that says, I have been updated as an RSS feed. I have been updated as an RSS feed. New episode lands, whatever. I've been updated. What that does is, if my RSS feed's here and you publish something through Captivate, over here, you might have Overcast or Google Podcasts or any of the apps that support Podping. And they've chosen to see that identifier exists and listen to it. So when we go ping, Podping, ping, there's something new. They say, brilliant, we'll have that and we'll show it to the listeners. We'll show it to the users. All right? So that's one initiative. It gets rid of that. Why is Apple taking 24 hours to update? I mean, granted, Apple don't support it yet, I don't think. But, if they were to, the ping would work. So that's one initiative. The other initiative is something called the Podcast Index. The way that this works is imagine a directory, a catalog of every podcast on the planet. All right. That exists and existed primarily with Apple. So what would happen is I'd create a new podcast, Spark Rebellion with Gaz. I'd submit to Apple. Apple would say, yeah, brilliant. That is definitely a podcast. We're going to let it in and people can search for it. They can follow it and subscribe. They can listen. It is in the Apple Podcast Index, the directory. Okay. Then what then happened was you'd get other apps. So you say Apple, they've got their directory here. Overcast, Pocket Casts, other apps, Good Pods for argument's sake. What they would do is they would say, right, I'm going to create an app and I'm going to add some features like Overcast has got specific features that Apple and the others don't have. The apps could then say, right, I need to populate my app, the search results in my app, with all the podcasts that exist. Otherwise, no one's going to use my podcast, my podcast app. Like if I go and use a new podcast app and the podcast that I listen to is not there, I'm not going to use it. Why would I listen? So what they used to do was they used to say, right, go via API, code it in to get everything from Apple's directory, at certain intervals, to go and refresh the directory in my app from Apple's index. So we'd submit to Apple as podcasters, and basically everyone else would get that info from there. The challenge was that was theoretically a proprietary index that was owned and controlled by one company. And if that company chose to do something that people didn't like, or that they didn't believe in, didn't fit their own belief system with that index, there was very little recourse. You couldn't really do anything with that. So another initiative as part of Podcasting 2.0 is something that you may have heard of called Podcast Index, which is an open podcast index. Apps can choose not to show certain shows or to show certain shows or whatever. But when those changes are made within the apps, they never affect the index. The index is like the source of truth, and it's open. It's an open initiative to keep podcasting open. So you've sort of got these open RSS feeds, this open index. So it's becoming a little bit more decentralized, and that's sort of the mission, all right, with Podcasting 2.0. It's a big deal. The other thing, and the sort of the reason that we put a release out yesterday, is something's called the podcast namespace. Now, a namespace, it's a bit of a technical term, but a namespace, I talked about my little girl's kind of box of shapes, all right? And the box is the RSS feed, and there's only certain shapes that you can put in them, and they're the tags and the RSS feed things that we can use. A namespace is like buying an extra box, but also a box where you can sort of make holes yourself. And okay, these shapes in this new box, I can make some space for those in this other box that I own already, and I can sort of make them fit. And I should probably check with everyone else to make sure that if I get this, like, they're all right with it. So what this does is, podcast namespace is a collection of other RSS-based tags. Now, an RSS tag, like I talked about earlier, is essentially a label. So an author is an RSS tag, episode author, show author. That's a label. And I might be the information associated with that label. So it's essentially a key and value relationship. The key is the author and the value is my name. And that runs throughout RSS feeds. Episode number is a label, is a key, and the value is episode 12. That's the information that is against that label. Okay, so tags. What happens then with Podcasting 2.0 is that we, as a collective, we here at Captivate, all the other hosting companies, industry professionals like Daniel J. Lewis, James Cridland, and obviously Adam Curry and Dave, just a lot of different people, a lot of people that love podcasting collaborate over on the Podcasting Next website, the Podcasting 2.0 website, and primarily over on GitHub, which is a repository for code and geekery. We collaborate and we say, wouldn't it be cool if this tag existed? And here's the use case for it. Like, here's how I'd use it. And other people go, oh, yeah, all right, that actually is quite interesting. We could actually make it do this. That might be easier. Or, I like that idea, but I'm not sure about this aspect of it. And what we do is we all collaborate and we refine all of these ideas. And then the podcast namespace, this new box of stuff, these new tags, every now and again, some of the tags, which I'll speak more in a while, some of these tags go through review with everyone in the group, all the peer reviews, and people say, well, all right, yeah, let's put these 3 new tags into production, which means that they're available. They're officially supported, and they do a release. And these tags become part of this new box, this podcast namespace, that we can then use, this new box of fun stuff, and plug all that new fun stuff into your RSS feed to essentially make new features available to your podcast. All right. So a real kind of general rule of thumb on this one, a real way to simplify tags and RSS feeds and all that sort of stuff and Podcasting 2.0 is a tag is essentially a feature. All right. And that's another prohibitive sort of term. We tend to use the word tag when we really should use feature. Tag's the technical term for it, but it's actually a feature. All right, let me explain. If I put the episode title in an RSS feed, okay, so you type episode 204 is, The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2, Chapter 18, Review. I type that into my hosting platform, and that goes into a tag which displays the episode title. Podcasting apps add a feature, and it's a basic feature that's been there since day one, but it is a feature, which is My podcast app shows episode titles. And it's the same with episode numbers and season numbers and authors and also any information that you enter into your hosting company gets put into a tag, which the apps, Overcast, so on and so forth, Apple, whatever, they use these tags to create features. Okay, so a great feature would be the search in Apple Podcasts. It searches the episode title tags and the show title tags. Without those tags, those features wouldn't exist. Okay, so what Podcasting 2.0 and the podcast namespace in particular is trying to do is they are trying to add features, all right? They are trying to add features to podcasting that will make the creator experience better, but that will also make the listener experience better. Now, what's very, very interesting about this and what is, I think, is important to understand, because we've supported Podcasting 2.0 for a long, long time. Kieran and I were on the Podcasting 2.0 show, like, I want to say 2 years ago with Adam. We've supported things like Podping, OP3, which is another initiative, the Open Analytics Initiative, and the transcript feature, if you like, the transcript. We supported that for a long time. But here's what's important to understand, and the reason I say that is that we've only just done a big release of Podcasting 2.0 features because those features require symbiotic relationships. All right? Now, let me explain what that means. If I was to include a lot of new sort of RSS feed features, and we'll go through some of these in a bit. All these new tags. If the apps on the other side, the listening apps, for example, Overcast and whomever else, didn't support the idea of listening to and looking for these tags and features and then doing something with them in their interface so a listener could see the result of that tag, it would be pointless. And what would happen is podcasters would see that Podcasting 2.0 is a thing and a hosting company supports it, but what's the point? It's just another fad. It's just going to disappear because the apps don't support it. So as with any emerging technology, when like Captivate serves a lot of podcasters, tens of thousands of podcasts, and from one download a month to millions of downloads per month per show. All right. We support the entire range of podcasts. So what you have to do is understand, and from our side, understand that we have a responsibility to balance the release of things like this and only release them at such a point that the busy podcaster, the serious independent creator like you, can make use of them and see them in action enough that you believe in the initiative, because you only get one shot at things like this. It's like if you go to a new bar, I go up to the village locally, I go into a new bar, the beer's terrible, the food's terrible, and it's freezing cold, which it would be today because it's snowing. I'm probably not going to go back. So you got to get the heating on. You got to make sure the pipes are clean and make sure your chef's on top form for the first experiences, because you only get that first chance once. So what we decided to do was really focus on the important features. Let them mature. Let them become part of the psyche, if you like, part of the conversation, part of the developmental process for the listening apps and so on and so forth, so that when we did put them in your dashboard, you didn't say, well, Matt, why am I wasting time filling this in? Because no one's using it. Thank you, Michael. No one's using it. So that's the responsibility. And don't get me wrong, a few people in the industry, Captivate should have supported these earlier. That's wrong. I disagree with that, because, I personally, not the team, I've got a duty of care to you, the podcaster. And if I give you something that is not mature enough, like I said, you'll lose faith in that new initiative. So yeah, we could have given you them earlier, but no, they wouldn't have been in use. So you just said, well, sure, Captivate. And it would have been great for us. A few other hosts did it and they did it half baked. We could have said Captivate supports all of these new features of Podcasting 2.0, and it'd have been a checkbox in a feature list on a website. We may have got more signups from it. But what's the point? Because you'll come back and you'll say, well, this is rubbish. And then collectively, Podcasting 2.0 gets a bad brand name and nothing happens with it. But we don't want that to happen. We want it to move forward. We want it to progress and to develop. And that is, so it's always a balance, sort of an insight into a bit of a founder life there. It's always a bit of a balance. All right. So that's the skinny on Podcasting 2.0. I'm going to go to some questions in a second. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to some of the tags that we do support and potentially what the future of Podcasting 2.0 and these new features might look like. All right. So I'm going to look over here. I've got 3 or 4 questions in. I'm going to pick those up. I'll go through some comments myself as well. But if you do have any questions, stick them in now. I've got maybe a 20-second delay from me saying this now to you getting this on your stream. So let me know. We'll go through some questions. Then I'm going to talk about some of the features that we did roll out, plus some of the non-Podcasting 2.0 things we rolled out. And then talk a little bit about the future of podcasting as well, because I think that's fascinating. I love doing it. Okay, let's go. So Kimberly's Italy, can we get some more detailed metrics on unique users? That's a good question. So the way that unique users work in terms of the IAB guidelines, right? There's 2 parts to this. So the IAB certification, which is what advertisers use to say, are the statistics from your podcast hosting company accurate? We are verified and we are certified with the IAB. All right. So they're verified as accurate. The way that you track a unique user is you say, right, all right, let's just say there's 2 downloads. Someone downloads episode 1 and episode 2. Did this download 1 for episode 1 and the download for episode 2 come from the same IP address on the same device in the same kind of time frame and same kind of area? All right, broadly speaking, there are other bits of factors, but that's sort of the broad, I suppose, algorithm. And if all those answers are yes, then we can safely assume that that is a unique listener. However, things like mobile cell towers, they change IP addresses, dynamic IP range, and so on and so forth, make that really difficult to track. So we obviously do a best estimate, which is pretty accurate actually, but we can't do that much more with the information. We could, but I wouldn't be confident enough that it would be accurate enough for you to sell to sponsors. Like we toyed with the idea and we designed it into Dashboard too. Returning visitors, like your returning listeners, but you can't. If the IP address changes, it might be me coming back. But if the IP address changes, we just don't know. And then you get into GDPR territory, storing IP addresses without purging them. And then suddenly you have to ask for consent. So it's a real minefield when it comes to unique listeners. And the other part of that is that you can't necessarily control the whole listening experience in the ecosystem. So this, you've actually, Kimberly's Italy, you've actually nailed on why Spotify wants to close people into their ecosystem, right? So, we've built apps before. We've built a lot of businesses around apps. What you can do when you control an entire app ecosystem is you can track essentially every event. Why do you think apps want you to register? It's not for you, it's for them. So that you can log in, you've got a unique identifier for you, the listener, the user, whatever. And every click that you make, that's called an event. A click is an event. Every event that you take inside their app can be mapped to you, which in turn can be mapped to the time that you did things, to the behavior that you took before and after doing said thing, the click or the event. And then trend reports can be built that can then be sold. That's what TikTok and so on are there for. Look at the T's and C's. Foursquare, that data is useful because you can sell it to advertisers. Well, at 3:00, they always do this particular thing and they listen for this particular amount of time in this particular location. Target them with this ad. All right. That's why people like Spotify and so on want you in their end-to-end ecosystem, because all of that data is there. Now, sure, they can give you bits like actual unique listener data, but it's only the bit from Spotify, and Apple can give you some from them. But across all of the massive open ecosystem, it's really tough to track every single unique listener. Now, I know that was a bit of a deep dive, but I think it's important to understand that, because that's where sort of like podcasting and the intersection of like data privacy and protection really kicks in, which is fascinating. We'll go to Michael Hurst. Thank you for that question, by the way, Kimberly's Italy. we'll go to Michael, the wonderful Michael Hurst, the ever-present, always supportive. Good to see you, mate, as ever. Is there anything we as a podcaster need to do to properly take advantage of these new features? Well, this is a great question, all right? It's easy to sort of want to do everything quickly. What's the best way to say this? It's like every feature, all right? You've sort of got to plan out, is it any good? Like, it's like my dog, my granddad used to buy dog food, all right? I kid you not. He didn't have a dog and he'd buy dog food when it was on sale, just in case I came round with Pete, my old dog. And I went round maybe 3 times with the dog because the dog was like 6'4" and my granddad was like 5'3" and very frail. And it was just a bad combo. So, but when I did go around, he's like, I've got some dog food. All right. What my granddad didn't do was assess the usefulness of that dog food. And he just kept buying it and he kept using it and he kept, instead of just having like 3 tins. All right. And it's the same with features. Are they going to help you today materially? Which, if they are, that's pretty cool. Go for it. Or, and there's nothing wrong with this, am I just a tech person that likes tinkering? And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but set the expectations of if it'll do anything. Now, to get very specific on these particular features, a lot of these features aren't supported by very many podcasting apps. All right, that's absolutely true. So things like value for value, cryptocurrency, which we'll talk about in a bit. It's very bleeding edge technology. So if you want to dig into it, you will get ahead of the curve. Things like the location tag, I think, are useful. So go into your podcast settings and then RSS enhancements, because Captivate is calling these RSS enhancements powered by Podcasting 2.0 because we work in plain, understandable language. So location tag, yes. Some of the season tags and so on and so forth, yes, by all means use them. Will they change your podcasting for the better? Yes. Will it be drastic right now? No. But you're getting ahead. It puts you ahead of most other podcasters. Now, what we have done, and the reason we're doing this session, is we've put out a massive blog post that explains all of the new features. I don't have time to go through them all here. But we've also done, so if you go to your Captivate dashboard, click on podcast settings, what you will see is the RSS enhancements tab. But where we've introduced a new feature, the little pink, it's called like a pill. It's you'll see it's like a pink label, and it tells you what the tag is, what the new feature is for Podcasting 2.0. If you click on that, it takes you to the official Podcasting 2.0 explanation of that particular feature, of that particular tag. I mean, we've put the information in for you, but there's more depth on that website. Okay, so you can click on each one of those pink things. Now, these aren't going to change your world right away, but you'll just get ahead of it. And it's good for tinkering. It's nice to be able to talk about these things and for you to be ahead of the curve. So if you get some time, and when you get some time, spend some time with them, but don't do it to the detriment of like your audience growth and your production and so on and so forth. And this was actually one of the other reasons that we didn't put these features out much earlier, because we do know a portion of our audience would have dove too deep into them, not knowing that some listening apps just weren't supporting them. So, that takes time away from your marketing, which we don't want to do. You've got to grow your show. That's why we exist. Yeah. But the man, Mr. Jeff Townsend, let me take a drink. Always a pertinent and pointed question from the man himself. What if the major podcast listening apps don't buy into all these 2.0 things we talk about? Well, so this is, we could do an hour on this. This is where open podcasting exists. Excuse me. So if you imagine like the value for value tag, which is a way of taking and giving crypto rewards as payments, if you like. It's a little bit bizarre. I mean, crypto is crypto, and let's not get too crazy on it. But I could pay you 0.000000022 cents because I thought you did some value, add some value. That's called a SAT, a Satoshi. And you could receive it. I could give you 1,000 for like 22 cents or whatever. If I thought you'd said something on your podcast that was great or whatever, and you could give me it back if I advocated for your show. That's value for value, which we've done a great article on. Danny's written something wonderful on that one. Go and check it out. Danny, you might want to post a link to that actually, dude. But only certain apps support it, like Fountain, and there's a couple of others. So you have to be using Fountain to be able, or one of the few other apps, to be able to listen to an episode and give you crypto. It's not crypto, it is crypto money. That's probably more relevant. And for me to stream that money to you and for you to receive it and vice versa. Now, if the big podcast, like value for value, I will not be in Apple Podcasts. I would be shocked if they ever go down that route. And I mean shocked. Like, I can't understate or overstate how much of a shock that would be. Like, it would be the biggest shock of my entire career if they went down that route. All right. So what that means is that you end up with sort of niche things going on. You end up with like the social podcasting trend. People use good pods. Not everyone uses good pods, but a decent number of people do. That's cool. They'll stay over there. Same with people that use Fountain. They'll stay over there. So this is sort of the benefit of the open podcasting ecosystem, is that you will get pockets of people using specific places to listen to their podcasts or to interact with their podcasts based on the feature set that particular app supports, and they'll grow their niche audience. Just like I could talk to you on 1,000 things: Slack, Messenger, WhatsApp, Discord, Telegram. People love Discord, and that's the Discord crew, and people love Slack, and that's the Slack crew. So it's the same thing. These pockets will start to exist. And I think that one of the important things to remember with podcasting 2.0, but also any emerging technologies, that not all of it will stick. Some of the ideas and the features will die, and maybe 10%, 15% of them will stick. But that's cool because we've progressed things by a long way if we do that, okay? Now, I don't see the major players adopting this. It's like anything, the adoption curve for new tech, the super cutting edge people, the early adopters, then it, spirals away and then it becomes common and everyone's done it. Like Apple and Spotify are right at the far end of the early adoption curve, something would have to be very, very useful or very, very mass market for Apple to adopt it, because it doesn't matter to them. They've got such market share that it would take such a while for the amount of niche people to come together to stop using Apple for that to matter to their user base. All right. And that's why, we can all start slating Apple, but they have their goals, and their goals are different to ours. They're Apple. The whole podcasting industry is worth like a day and a half worth of Apple revenue. It's the reality, So I think that's what will happen. We'll start to see pop-ups. We'll start to see, pop-up niches and so on, where people do, people have an app that supports a number of P2O features that are really interesting, and that's what they're known for, like Fountain. And I don't see the major players supporting any of them really very well for a long, long time. That doesn't mean it's going away. It just means we're progressing the open ecosystem. Everyone's got their own goals, remember. Spotify, Amazon, it's all about ad revenue. All right, that's obvious. And, that's all right. Got a frog. I was watching Bing with my kid earlier, and it was the frog episode. Maybe that's why. God, I watch too much Bing. Pascal Fintoni, how can one become as smart and handsome as Mark Asquith? I'll tell you straight, a lot of takeaways. It's a lockdown weight, Pascal. I've got to get rid of the lockdown weight, mate. 3 years and counting. Like, we haven't been in lockdown for 2 years, but I'm just like, it's lockdown weight, everybody. I appreciate it. Two Gals Homesteading. Will sponsors and advertisers have a place on 2.0 RSS? Yeah, whatever. These tags can be created and developed. If you said, right, we want something particular that will show who this episode is sponsored by, and we want that to be a tag so that it can be read and placed in a place within an app, like a trailer can be read, and someone can say, all right, that episode is a trailer. So like they do in Spotify and Apple, right? So what we'll do is that we know that episode's a trailer. So instead we'll put that episode at the top. Okay. And they could do that with the sponsors. All right, this episode is sponsored by such and such an app. Actually, Spotify had a little bit of a glitch with that this week, doing something similar. So yeah, that could be the case. You could use something like Captivate's dynamic show notes to do some of that stuff as well. But if the industry came together and said it would be useful to have a place where you could say this episode is sponsored by such and such, give it a specific place that apps can then read, of course, yeah, it could be part of that. Absolutely. And we could, there's other things we could do with that, like the sponsor link and so on. Good question. Really good question. Joshua Friedemann, I'm interested to learn how the micropayment element will work. Will it just be in the Captivate player, or will it be available in Apple, Spotify, etc.? So it will be anywhere. Yes, we'll put it in the Captivate player, but it will be in anywhere. So this is our tags and features. It will be in anywhere that chooses to read that you have that tag in your RSS feed. So like Fountain will scan the feed and go, right, if that tag, that feature isn't in this feed, that's cool. You can still listen to the episodes and the show, right? That's fine. However, if we see that feed as Fountain, we will, and we see that tag, that feature is enabled, we have functionality that will see that as Fountain and enable you to do other things that rely on that. So like press a button to stream sats, for example. So it's very much about that. That's that symbiotic relationship that I talked about, the back and forth. You know, it's very much about that. We can give you the place to put it in your feed and we can support it, but the apps have to go, yeah, that exists. Let's build a feature around that so that the interface, so that the listener can interface with that feature and take some action, press a button to do something like to stream micropayments. Does that make sense? It's a little bit of a weird one. I realize that. Next question. Mike Flake, question: can the QR codes that come from the episode GUID podcasting 2.0 feature be included on printed items? Short answer, yes. It's just a QR code. A slightly longer explanation of that is what Mike is talking about is that each episode in your RSS feed inside your podcast has what's called a GUID, which is basically a unique identifier. It's called a GUID, all right? And it basically says, it's like your fingerprint. I could change my name, I can change my haircut, I could put weight on, I could lose weight, but my fingerprint's going to stay the same, and I can always be ID'd by that fingerprint. So a GUID in episodes has always existed, which is why when we run an import from, like, say you move in from Anchor or whatever, we can run an import on your RSS feed. We import all the episodes, but we keep every episode's GUID the same. What that means is that people like Apple Podcasts, when you do your 301 redirect, they don't see a new feed that has been redirected from your old one and go, uh-oh, Mike Flake's podcast has got 164 new episodes, and downloads all the back catalogue, because what it sees is that the fingerprint of those episodes has remained the same, and it's just the location of them that has shifted. So Apple sees that and goes, no. Actually, all those old episodes that we've got, that's them, all right? Don't re-download them, don't duplicate them, like that is them, all right? So what Mike is talking about is that there is now a show-level GUID, a show-level fingerprint, all right? Previously, there wasn't. So what would happen is that you would move in your RSS feed from say, Anchor to Captivate, and you'd have feed number 1, feed number 2, and it would be whatever, Anchor, such and such, / whatever, and Captivate, whatever, would be the RSS feed. You would do a 301 redirect, which you still do, but for all intents and purposes, these were two different things, two different podcasts that happened to redirect between each other. There was no common fingerprint like there is for episodes, okay? So what this does is it gives the show a fingerprint, a GUID, a unique identifier that will never change, even if you change your URL. So like I might change the Spark of Rebellion URL from spark-of-rebellion to just Spark of Rebellion. Theoretically, they're two different shows because they're two different RSS feeds. We know they're the same and we would redirect them. However, with the GUID, if apps support the GUID, theoretically, and this will not happen for a long, long time, theoretically, we wouldn't need to do 301 redirects because we would import using the GUID and that would just stay the same and jobs are good. But one really good side effect of that is that we can be confident, Mike, that GUID is never going to change. So that if you do printed materials with that QR code, even if you change the name of your podcast, even if you change the URL, even if you change the RSS feed, that QR code, you know, those 10,000 business cards that we all get printed for events, those QR codes will still work. So you don't have to take the cards and put them in the bin and get some new ones, which is the real benefit of this. All right. So yeah, you could use them on printed materials and they will always be safe. They will always work. All right. So that's again, a really good question. Let's have a quick look. Brad Miller Always good to see you, mate. Is there a place or any purpose of communicating or trying to interpret all this geek speak about 2.0 to our actual listening audience? Right. Really good question, as always, Brad. So, yeah, there is, but only where it matters. And I would define it mattering if it will materially affect the listening experience for the listener. All right. So, as a great example of this would be the QR codes. Right, okay, look, there's a new feature within my podcast. We now have a QR code. So if you are a fan, if you're a patron, or if you are a fan, just give me a tweet and I'll send you some business cards or leaflets out, and you can just pass these around your friends and the QR code can get scanned. And guess what? If we support value for value, I can send you Satoshis, some cryptocurrency to say thank you for that. So that's a real sort of straightforward example, but you would only communicate. It's a little bit like marketing, actually. You would not communicate the feature. You would communicate the benefit. All right. You would communicate the benefit. So would I be going out and saying podcasting, I'm now part of podcasting 2.0? Maybe, but that would be more of a brand positioning thing. Brad and his shows are really at the cutting edge. That's not going to affect the listener, but it will position you. Then I would think about what features, like Michael said earlier on, what features do I want to use on my podcast? And then how do I communicate them to the betterment of my podcast and for the benefit of my audience? And I would just pick one or two of these real benefits. Use it pretty sparingly. All right. The easy one is the QR code, like I said, and you would obviously tell people about that. So just think about the benefit that each one of these new features brings, read into it. We can help through support and just decide, where does this fit in to my communication and to my marketing? Right. Next question. I've only got 2 or 3 minutes left, by the way. We'll just zip through some questions. So last call for questions. We're going to finish up at the top of the hour because I've got a little girl that's going to start whining at me for food, and I got to feed her. It's like an obligation that I've got. So let's go for this. Michael, what are your thoughts about the overwhelming pressure to convert podcast to video content? Can we remain audio only and still thrive? Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, you can. I mean, it depends what kind of experience you want to give, but it also depends on, how capable are you of marketing, how capable are you of attracting new listeners through well-optimized video content. What type of video content can you put out? Video is a funny one because if it's not done well, there's almost not really any point to it, in my opinion. Yes, arguably YouTube, biggest search engine in the world, but are you going to spend time search optimizing your titles for YouTube? If you are, then bloody do it. But if you're not, the chances of people stumbling on your, it's not going to upgrade your experience too much in terms of downloads. So I'm always a fan of, you have to build one thing and make the numbers work. And then when those numbers are working and reliably flywheeling themselves up, only then should you add another stream. Otherwise, you spread yourself too thin and nothing really grows. You have got a great face for podcasting, Danny. So what I would suggest is that there's no harm in it if you can do it well and it takes up less time than you expect. I don't want it to draw you away from building your audio and building your audience through audio. Okay. That is important. If it will detract too much, then for now, focus on audio. Of course, you can still thrive. Most of the podcasts that we see that are earning a pile of money are audio because people want audio still. It's fine. So just to summarize that, if you can add video at little expense, make it decent quality, and it not take that much time, then by all means do it. But if not, if it will take away from your audio experience, then for now, don't worry too much about it. Be the best that you can in audio. All right. I think that's it. Have we got any more questions? I've gone through the documente. I think we're all good. Well, thank you. This has been excellent. I've really enjoyed this. Top of the hour as well. Perfect timing. Podcasting 2.0 is here to stay. It will develop. How much of it will stick, I don't know, but it's the evolution, and all evolution is fraught with risk. It's fraught with challenging times. It's fraught with adoption challenges. And not all of it will stick. 5, 10, 15, 20%, if we are lucky, will become mainstream features over the course of the next 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years. But it's good that we are moving forward. All right. It's really good that we are moving forward, and Captivate continues to be sensibly at the forefront of this balance. All right. This is what it's about. Okay. So thank you. We also did some other release features, some big features, episode planning updates. You can now add private production notes to your episode planning and research tool. And if you have your own network with Captivate, which you can all do, there is now a network level RSS feed to aggregate all of your podcast episodes from every podcasting network into one RSS feed. Thank you to the Horse Radio Network for pushing us to do that one, which we actually built a few years ago and then pulled out of the feature set. So we got it in. Thank you, everyone. Much love to Paul and to Guthrie and to Sally and to Doc Rock and to Danny and to Gaz and to Annette. Good to see you, Annette. Always really good. I miss seeing you. To Rob Lawrence, to everyone, Kimberly's Italy, Pascal Fantoni, to Josh, literally everyone. Thank you so much. Enjoy yourself, stay well, stay safe, and just keep on captivating.